How good was that? How good was that? Manchester City back in action. Manchester City back to winning ways. And whisper it, Manchester City looking like a team again. Welcome back to the City Ramble, leading the conversation in the world of Man City. If you are new, if this is your first time watching, or if you're a return viewer and you haven't yet, make sure to check out our City Ramble Discord. But most importantly, hit the subscribe button, get involved because there'll be plenty of big, exciting content on this channel throughout the season. But apologies, there was no immediate match reaction video yesterday. I was dead busy with work myself, weekends, whatever, blah, blah. And instead of doing a straight up match review, I've figured because we will have a panel review show later on, I think possibly Monday that will go up, and obviously throughout the week, plenty of reaction to City 4, Wolves 0. But I wanted to speak on one of what I felt like was possibly the more important talking points from this game, because obviously you had Haaland scoring loads of goals, obviously you had Tijani Reinders playing so well. I did player ratings for one of the websites I work for, and I gave him a 10 out of 10. I thought his debut was that good. Well, Premier League debut. But obviously we had all them talking points, but I wanted to hone in, I wanted to focus in on specifically the midfield, because I feel like watching that game, and immediately I want to say it's one match. You don't want to get carried away. You don't want to be drawing too many conclusions, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like City might have just fixed their biggest problem. And what is that biggest problem? Well, for me, the biggest problem Guardiola and City have at the moment is how do they maintain a balanced starting 11 setup, team in general, if you have got no Rodri. And with Nico Gonzalez, with Tijani Reinders, and with Bernardo Silva, I really feel like City have a very good base, blueprint, plan to go forward in terms of when they don't have to use Rodri. And this isn't even just when Rodri is, as he is at the moment, unavailable through injury or whatever. I also feel like when City are maybe playing matches against lesser opposition, they can get away with not having to play him week after week after week after week, which might have played a part in his injury. Maybe it was a stroke of bad luck, whatever. We've been over it, but we saw last year just how devastating it was when Rodri wasn't in the team, and you sort of cobbling together Kovacic, and you've got Gundogan in there, who's a City legend, but possibly over the hill a little bit in terms of being able to play 3 times a week. It feels like with Nico Gonzalez, Reinders, and Bernardo Silva, you have the legs in Gonzalez and obviously Reinders as well. With Reinders, you've got that box-to-box ability, a player who is going to be in your defensive half, but at the same time, he's got that energy and the stamina to get up the opposite end of the pitch. And obviously, as we saw, fantastically linking defence with attack. And Bernardo Silva, who, don't get me wrong, has had his criticisms, has had his, people have looked at him and said, is he up to the task anymore? But with Bernardo Silva, you obviously have immense experience at this point. He's club captain for a reason. Yes, he's into his 30s, but, I still feel like he's a very serviceable member of the team. But I think in the Wolves game, in terms of, he played 66 minutes, so obviously he didn't play, the full 90. But even still, he created 4 chances. And you might look at that sort of midfield three of Gonzalez, Reinders, and Bernardo Silva, and I saw some people saying this when we were predicting 11s before the match at the weekend. Where's the creativity? Well, obviously Tijani Reinders, we've seen that by now. He had 3 shots in the game against Wolves. He created a chance as well. Not that he gets the assist for it, but the dinked ball over the top for the Rico Lewis cross for the opening goal for Haaland. I mean, that's as good as an assist, isn't it? That's creativity, even though it might not show on the stat sheets. And then Bernardo Silva, and you get into the front three, obviously Doku, who had a bit of a quiet game. I felt like a bit underwhelmed by his performance, but I feel like he's going to get better. Oscar Bob, though, stunning, absolutely stunning performance from him. You might not have that number 10 there who is popping up, creating chances. Like when Shirky came on, he was so involved. You might not have that sort of player there, but I feel like when you do it by committee, you almost you keep the balance, and also at the same time you can still get the best attributes. And I just feel like one of my biggest fears going into this season wasn't the fact that the Unks were sticking around. It was more that are they going to be the are they going to be the first names on the team sheet almost? Or not first names in terms of obviously Haaland and, Diaz or, what Foden if he's fit, whatever. In terms of when they're needed to be, are they going to be used more than the likes of Nico Gonzalez, Tajani Reinders, etc., etc., Oscar Bob even, in terms of the front three. So that for me anyway, watching this Wolves game, it might just be early doors and hopefully not, but Guardiola might revert to type and start playing, when Kovacic is back fit and Gundogan, and that's fine and thinking some matches, but it's when you sort of cobble them all together and City give the ball away and suddenly you've got, 30-year-olds running towards their own goal and you can just think, oh God, that's not needed for me. And I think another helpful point in this, shout out if you made it this far, hit subscribe, hit the like button, all of that lovely business. Rico Lewis's involvement, because again, he's another player who on their own you might not go, best in the team, or you might not say individual quality-wise. I think he's magical, but I'm saying sort of other people's conversations surrounding Rico Lewis at times sort of maybe downplay his quality. What I think is what one of Rico Lewis's best strengths is, when he's playing around other good footballers, that definitely brings the best out of him. And with that sort of defensive setup, you have Aït-Nouri on one side, who obviously is happy to he can invert, he can get down the wing, he can be all over the pitch basically. Was impressed by him. Diaz Stones, which I think, on paper, everyone's favourite centre-back partnership, I think. Obviously the treble-winning partnership, and I feel like that's got a lot of promise. When Gvardiol comes back into the team, I'm happy with Diaz and Gvardiol as well. But with Rico Lewis, you do get that player who is able to step into midfield, and that does provide a little bit more protection for the likes of Nico Gonzalez, Tajani Reinders, Bernardo Silva, who's obviously physically maybe not where he used to be, but I still feel like he can contribute. So it just feels like with that setup, we need to see it a few more times in action, don't get me wrong, but it does feel like City might have just about fixed the biggest problem. Because if City can get, post-ACL, meniscus injury, if City can get 40 games from Rodri this season, I think that's going to be a success. What the breakdowns of minutes look like there, I'm not sure. Maybe starts-wise, you'd be hoping for, the overwhelming majority to be starts. What I don't think City can be doing, whether or not they'll be allowed to do it anyway with his fitness, is flogging him 3 times a week over and over again. Rodri doesn't need to play against, for example, Sparta Prague in the Champions League. If City draw, a team of that caliber, Slovan Bratislava, whatever, those lesser Champions League teams where you feel like the rotation in the past maybe should have been a bit more. Off the top of my head, I can't remember in the 23-24 season the matches that Rodri sat out, and obviously he had that amazing unbeaten run where basically every time he played he didn't get beat until the cup final. We don't speak about that, but I don't think he played against Luton at home. Maybe one of the FA Cup matches. It was a lot of football. City, Guardiola, they don't need that. I don't feel like now they can get away with this sort of different personnel, different players in and around there, which is promising for me. I'm crossing my fingers we continue to see it, because again, I don't want to go back to sort of Bernardo, Gundogan, Kovacic, all in a midfield three. I think Nico Gonzalez, Reinders, plus one of them, if that's Bernardo Silva, if that's Gundogan, if that's Kovacic, I think you've got enough there. Obviously as well, Phil Foden's coming back in. Maybe you don't need one of the so-called unks in the team as well, because you can maybe play Foden, and obviously he'll be so much more creative than what City have got elsewhere anyway. So yeah, plenty to take away from that Wolves game. There'll be plenty of reaction on this channel as well, so make sure to stick around for it, subscribe and get involved in the Discord. But I feel like that, for me anyway, about 24 hours after the match, that's what I'm looking at as one of the biggest talking points, one of the biggest almost takeaways, one of the most promising parts of it. Because if City can solve that, you're talking a lot of success, especially when you've got Rodri to come back in for the bigger games. You can keep him a bit fitter, a bit fresher. So yeah, if that can be solved, then I will be a very, very happy Manchester City fan. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and get involved in all the conversation on the social medias. The handles are sort of floating about at the bottom of this screen. Like I said, plenty more content throughout the week ahead of Tottenham Hotspur. That'll be a big task, won't it? I feel like we can all get excited about beating Wolves, but Spurs at home will be a big task. So yeah, bring it on. Looking forward to it. Until next time, it's been a pleasure, and we will see you later.